The metal restraints bit into Jack Sullivan's wrists as the Vorkan guards shoved him forward. He stumbled but caught himself, refusing to fall in front of these aliens. At 63 years old, his knees weren't what they used to be, but his pride still worked just fine. The throne room stretched out before him like something from a nightmare. Massive pillars carved from black stone rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Hundreds of Vorkan nobles filled the chamber, their scaled skin gleaming under harsh lights. Every single one of them was staring at Jack, and every single one of them was laughing. This is what humanity sends? A tall Vorkan with purple markings stepped forward, his voice dripping with contempt. An old man who smells like engine grease? More laughter echoed through the hall. Jack kept his mouth shut and his eyes forward. He'd spent 30 years hauling cargo between Earth's mining colonies. He'd survived reactor failures, meteor strikes, and one very memorable incident involving smuggled livestock. He could survive being laughed at. One of the guards jabbed him between the shoulder blades, forcing him deeper into the throne room. His boots scraped against polished floor that probably cost more than his entire ship. The Morning Star wasn't much to look at, but she'd been his home for 3 decades. Now she sat in some Vorkan impound bay, and Jack had no idea if he'd ever see her again. "Bring the human closer," a voice boomed from the far end of the chamber. Emperor Thexel sat on a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of obsidian. He was massive, easily twice Jack's height, with 4 muscular arms and eyes that glowed like hot coals. Jewels covered his armor, each one probably worth enough to buy a small moon. Jack was dragged forward until he stood at the base of the throne platform. He had to crane his neck back just to see the Emperor's face. "Look at him," the Emperor said, gesturing with 2 of his hands. "Their ships are barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Their weapons are laughable. They cling to 1 yellow star while we rule 40 systems across this sector." The nobles roared their approval. Jack noticed how they all wore military decorations, medals and ribbons covering their chests. These weren't just politicians. These were conquerors, warriors who'd spent their lives taking what they wanted. A shorter Vorkan, his scales dark green, circled Jack like a predator studying prey. "I've seen their broadcast. They still fight among themselves. Wars over resources, territory, ideology. Primitives killing primitives. At least we learned from our mistakes," Jack muttered before he could stop himself. The green Vorkan's head snapped around. "What did you say?" Jack met his eyes. "No point backing down now. I said we learned. We stopped fighting each other about 200 years ago. Had to. We knew we weren't alone out here." The Emperor leaned forward, his interest slightly piqued. "You knew? How?" "Radio signals. Energy signatures. We've been picking up alien transmissions since the early 2000s. We just never announced ourselves." Jack's shoulders ached from the restraints. "Figured it was smarter to stay quiet and listen." "Stay quiet and hide, you mean?" the green Vorkan sneered. "Like frightened children." More laughter. Jack let it wash over him. These aliens had no idea what they were talking about. Earth hadn't been hiding. Earth had been preparing, building, planning. But he wasn't about to tell them that. The Emperor rose from his throne, and the laughter died instantly. He descended the steps slowly, each footfall echoing through the now silent chamber. When he reached Jack, he bent down until they were almost face to face. "Human," the Emperor said quietly, though his voice still carried to every corner of the room. "I'm going to give you a gift. I am going to let you return to your pathetic little ship, and you will deliver a message to your Earth government." Jack waited. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face neutral. "Tell them this," the Emperor continued. "The Vorkan Empire claims Earth and all its territories. Your species will submit to our rule. You will open your worlds to our occupation. You will provide tribute and labor as we see fit. You have 3 days to accept these terms." "And if we refuse?" Jack asked. The Emperor smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Then we will erase humanity from existence. We will turn your cities into glass. We will boil your oceans. We will crack your planet's crust and leave it as a warning to other primitives who think themselves equal to their betters." The throne room erupted in cheers. Nobles stamped their feet and roared their approval. Jack felt sick. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a death sentence with a timer attached. 3 days, the Emperor repeated, standing back to his full height. "I suggest you use them wisely. Guards, return him to his vessel." As the Vorkan soldiers grabbed Jack's arms and hauled him toward the exit, he heard the nobles placing bets on whether Earth would surrender or fight. Most seemed to think humanity would kneel within hours of receiving the ultimatum. Jack said nothing. He'd deliver their message all right. But these arrogant aliens had made one critical mistake. They assumed humanity would react like every other species they'd conquered. They assumed fear would win. They had no idea what was waiting back on Earth. No idea what 2 centuries of preparation had created. No idea that humanity had been expecting this day since the first radio telescope picked up alien signals. As the throne room doors closed behind him, Jack allowed himself the smallest of smiles. 3 days. That was all the time the Vorkan Empire had left to enjoy their ignorance. Retry. Jack sat in the captain's chair of the Morning Star, his fingers hovering over the communication console. 2 Vorkan guards stood in the doorway, their weapons drawn, watching his every move. They didn't speak his language and he didn't speak theirs, but the message was clear. One wrong move and they'd shoot. The chair creaked under his weight. He'd sat in this same seat for 30 years, hauling mining equipment to the colonies on Mars and Europa. It was worn smooth in places, patched with tape in others. The whole ship was like that. Old, reliable, nothing fancy. Just the way Jack liked it. His hands moved across the keyboard, typing out a message using an encryption system that looked ancient. Because it was ancient. Earth Command had developed it 70 years ago, back when humans first confirmed they weren't alone in the universe. The Vorkan scanning his transmission probably thought it was adorable. One of the guards yawned. The other one was picking at something stuck between his teeth. Jack kept typing. The message was simple and direct. Location of the Vorkan fleet. Estimated ship count. Weapons capabilities he'd observed. The Emperor's ultimatum. 3 days to surrender or face extinction. He added one more line, a question really. Should he comply? He hit send and leaned back. The console beeped. The transmission shot out into space, bouncing through relay stations, encoded in a system these aliens thought was primitive. They had no idea that primitive was exactly what made it secure. Sometimes old tricks worked best. Hours crawled by. The guards changed shifts twice. Someone brought Jack a tray of something that looked like food but smelled like burnt plastic. He ate it anyway. His stomach had survived worse during the colony runs. The response came back 18 hours later. Same outdated encryption. Same simple coding. Jack read it twice to make sure he understood. Message received. Do not comply. Repeat. Do not comply. He deleted the message and shut down the console. The guards didn't even look up. As far as they were concerned, the old human had just sent a desperate plea for his government to surrender. They were probably right to assume that. Most species did. Humanity wasn't most species. 2 days passed in his quarters aboard the Vorkan station. Jack spent the time doing push-ups, sit-ups, anything to keep his mind occupied. He thought about his daughter Rachel. She joined Earth Defense Fleet against his wishes. They'd fought about it for months. Now he wondered if he'd ever see her again. On the morning of the 3rd day the guards came for him. Same rough handling, same metal restraints. They marched him back through corridors filled with Vorkan soldiers, all of them laughing and making gestures he didn't need translated. The throne room looked exactly the same. Same nobles, same pillars, same massive emperor sitting on his obsidian throne. But something felt different. The energy in the room was excited, eager. They were expecting entertainment. Emperor Thexal didn't bother standing this time. He simply gestured for Jack to be brought forward. Well, human? The Emperor's voice boomed across the hall. Does your Earth kneel before the Vorkan Empire? Jack took a breath. Here goes everything. No. Earth refuses your terms. For a moment, absolute silence filled the throne room. Then someone started laughing. Then another. Within seconds, the entire chamber erupted in hysterical laughter. Nobles were doubling over, slapping their armored legs, wiping tears from their eyes. Lord Malrix, the purple-marked Vorkan from before, could barely speak through his laughter. Refuses? One backward planet with a handful of colonies refuses the mighty Vorkan Empire. This is wonderful, another noble gasped. I haven't been this entertained in years. A massive Vorkan in military armor stepped forward. His chest was covered in medals, ribbons, and decorations that probably represented dozens of conquered worlds. Let me show you something, human. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the throne room. Images appeared, three-dimensional and crystal clear. Fleet formations, battle reports, conquest after conquest. 40 worlds, the general announced proudly. 600 years of military dominance. 10,000 warships in our fleet. We have never lost a war. Never. Not once in 6 centuries. More images flickered past. Burning cities. Shattered fleets. Species Jack had never seen before, their faces twisted in defeat. Your Earth has what? The general continued mockingly. A few hundred ships? Mining vessels converted to carry weapons? Colonies that can barely sustain themselves? We do what we can, Jack said quietly. Emperor Thexel rose from his throne, his amusement fading into something cold and dangerous. Then your Earth has chosen extinction. We will mobilize our entire fleet. Every ship, every weapon. In 1 week your planet will be a dead rock floating in space. Your cities will burn, Malrix added with obvious relish. Your oceans will boil. Your atmosphere will be stripped away. And we will broadcast it across every civilized world as a lesson. This is what happens to primitives who refuse the inevitable. The nobles cheered. Someone was already taking bets on how long Earth's defenses would last. The consensus seemed to be less than 6 hours. Jack felt something settle in his chest. A cold, hard certainty. These aliens had made their choice. Now they'd live with the consequences. He looked directly at Emperor Thexel. You want war? We will give you war. The words came out quiet but sharp, cutting through the noise like a blade. The laughter started again, even louder this time. But Jack noticed something. The Emperor wasn't laughing. Neither was the general. And the intelligence officer standing near the back of the room looked troubled. Give us war? Malrix wheezed. What are you going to do, throw asteroids at us? You should ask yourselves a question, Jack said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. We detected your signals 200 years ago. We knew you were out here. We knew more species existed. So why did we stay quiet? Why didn't we reach out, make contact, join your galactic community? Because you were afraid, the general said flatly. No, Jack met his eyes. Because we were preparing. Every shipyard building warships. Every colony training soldiers. Every scientist and engineer developing weapons for an enemy we hadn't met yet. We hoped we'd never need them. You're making sure we do. He's bluffing, someone shouted from the crowd. The throne room fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then it exploded with laughter so loud Jack thought the pillars might crack. Nobles were practically falling over each other, howling with amusement at the absurdity of what he'd just said. Lord Malrix clutched his sides, tears streaming from all 6 of his eyes. Give us war? You. A species that barely controls its own solar system. Another noble chimed in, his voice squeaking with laughter. They probably still use chemical rockets. Can you imagine? The general who'd shown the holographic displays earlier stepped forward, still chuckling. Human, let me explain something to you. We have conquered species that had technology your people won't develop for 1,000 years. We've destroyed fleets that outnumbered yours 100 to 1. What exactly do you think your Earth can do against the full might of the Vorkan Empire? Jack stood there letting them laugh. His wrists were raw from the restraints. His back ached from days of rough handling. But his mind was clear. He'd delivered Earth's response. Now he just needed to make sure these aliens understood what they were walking into. You never asked the right questions, Jack said, his voice cutting through the laughter. Emperor Thexel raised one of his 4 hands, and the throne room quieted. Speak, human. Entertain us one last time before we erase your kind from existence. Jack met the Emperor's eyes. Why did humanity stay quiet for 200 years? You assumed it was fear. You assumed we were hiding. But that doesn't make sense, does it? If we were that afraid, we would have surrendered the moment you found us. We would have begged for mercy, offered tribute, anything to avoid conflict. Your point? The general asked impatiently. We stayed quiet because we were listening, Jack continued. We picked up the Crithian trade broadcasts. We detected Helok's military communications. We tracked your Vorkan expansion across this entire sector. We knew you were all out here, conquering, expanding, fighting. And we made a choice. To hide like cowards, Malrix interjected. To prepare, Jack corrected firmly. Every government on Earth put aside their differences. Every nation contributed. We built shipyards in the asteroid belt, hidden bases on the dark side of moons, weapons platforms disguised as mining stations. We trained soldiers who've been studying your tactics for decades. We developed weapons specifically designed to fight enemies with superior technology. The Emperor leaned forward slightly. You're bluffing. If you had such capabilities, you would have revealed yourselves, joined the galactic community as equals. Why? Jack asked simply. So you could see us as a threat and attack us sooner? So you could form alliances against us before we were ready? We learned something from our own history, Emperor. The strong devour the weak. Always. So we stayed quiet, stayed hidden, and got strong. This is ridiculous, the general scoffed. Even if what you say is true, even if you've been building weapons for 2 centuries, you're still one system. One planet. We rule 40 worlds. Our industrial capacity alone could bury you in ships. Jack nodded. You're right. In a long war, numbers would win. That's why we won't fight a long war. The intelligence officer, who'd been standing quietly near the back, suddenly spoke up. His voice was worried. My lord, I must report something else. Our surveillance of Earth's system shows unusual activity. Emperor Thexel turned. Explain. The communications blackout I mentioned earlier. It's complete. But we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout their system. Power sources activating. Weapons charging. Their entire infrastructure has shifted to a war footing in less than 72 hours. 72 hours? Jack repeated. That's all it took. Because we've been practicing this exact scenario for generations. Every human colony knows their role. Every ship knows its position. Every weapon platform knows its target. You gave us 3 days to prepare. We've been ready for 200 years. The laughter had stopped completely now. Some nobles were starting to look uncomfortable. Malric stepped forward, his voice aggressive. You're trying to scare us. To make us reconsider. It won't work. I'm trying to warn you, Jack said. There's a difference. You asked what humanity can do against your empire? Let me tell you about human warfare. We don't fight for glory. We don't fight for honor. We don't follow your rules of engagement or your codes of military conduct. We fight to survive, and we will do absolutely anything to win. The general laughed, but it sounded forced. Every species says that before we crush them. No, Jack shook his head. They don't. You conquer warrior races who understand honor, who value courage, who fight according to traditions that go back millennia. Humanity threw all that away centuries ago. We learned that wars aren't won by the bravest or the most honorable. They're won by whoever is willing to go further, sacrifice more, and use every advantage no matter how brutal. Emperor Thexal's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening us with war crimes? I'm telling you that humans don't recognize the concept, Jack said bluntly. To us, there's only winning and losing. If you bring your fleet to Earth, you won't be fighting soldiers who care about honor. You'll be fighting 8 billion people who will use every weapon, every tactic, every dirty trick we've ever invented. And we've invented a lot. The throne room was completely silent now. Jack could see doubt creeping into some of the nobles' faces. Good. They should doubt. The intelligence officer spoke again, his voice shaking slightly. My lord, our deep space scouts just reported something. Human ships have been detected near 3 of our outer colonies. Just watching. Observing. They appeared out of nowhere and our sensors barely picked them up. Stealth technology, the general breathed. They have military-grade stealth. We have a lot of things, Jack said quietly. You want to know what we've been doing for 200 years? Building railguns that can punch through any shield you've got. Developing AI that can outthink your best tacticians. Creating nuclear weapons that make your plasma cannons look like toys. We took every lesson from every war we ever fought on Earth and applied it to one question. How do we beat a superior enemy? He paused, letting that sink in. The answer? You don't fight fair. You don't give them a chance. You hit first, hit hard, and you don't stop until they can't hit back. Emperor Thexel stood slowly, his forearms tensed. You dare threaten the Vorkan Empire in my own throne room? I'm not threatening, Jack said tiredly. I'm begging. Don't do this. Don't bring your fleet to Earth. Because if you do, a lot of people are going to die. Yours and mine. And for what? Pride. Territory? There's enough space in this galaxy for all of us. We do not negotiate with primitives, Malric spat. Then you'll die with them, Jack said simply. Your choice. The Emperor's face darkened with rage. Launch the fleet. Every ship. Every weapon. I want Earth reduced to lifeless rubble. I want humanity wiped from existence. And I want this old fool's head mounted on a spike outside my palace. The nobles roared their approval, but Jack noticed something. The intelligence officer looked sick. The general wasn't cheering. And several nobles near the back were whispering among themselves, uncertainty on their faces. As the guards grabbed Jack and started dragging him away, Emperor Thexal's voice boomed one final time. You want war, human? You'll have it. And when your planet is ash, when your species is extinct, the galaxy will remember what happens to those who defy the Vorkan Empire. Jack looked back over his shoulder one last time. No, Emperor. When this is over, the galaxy will remember that humanity gave you a chance. And you didn't take it. The throne room doors slammed shut behind him. Jack was thrown back into his cell, the guards muttering nervously among themselves. They'd heard everything. They knew what was coming. 3 days had passed. The warning had been delivered and ignored. Now there was nothing left to do but wait for the storm humanity was about to unleash. Admiral Vorn stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conqueror, watching as the Vorkan armada prepared to emerge from hyperspace. 10,000 warships. The largest fleet ever assembled in Vorkan history. Around him, officers moved efficiently between stations, their scales gleaming under the command center's lights. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his second-in-command announced. Vorn allowed himself a satisfied smile. This would be the easiest conquest in their 600-year history. One primitive planet. No allies. No defenses worth mentioning. The battle would be over in hours, maybe less. Begin final approach. Take us into Earth's solar system. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, near a massive gas giant the humans called Neptune. Vorn studied the tactical displays. Empty space. No defending fleet. No warning shots. Nothing. Sensors detect minimal activity in the inner system, the tactical officer reported. Some civilian traffic near the fourth planet. A few mining operations in the asteroid belt. No military vessels detected. They ran, someone muttered. The cowards actually abandoned their homeworld. Vorn nodded. It made sense. Faced with overwhelming force, the smart move was to evacuate what you could and surrender. He'd seen it 100 times before. Set course for the third planet. Full speed. Launch scout fighters to sweep ahead. The armada moved forward, 10,000 ships advancing like a spear thrust toward humanity's heart. Vorn was already composing his victory report to Emperor Thexel. This would be the shortest campaign in Vorkan military history. They passed the orbit of the seventh planet. Still nothing. The sixth planet, a giant with beautiful rings. Empty space. The fifth planet, massive and stormy. Their sensors picked up a few automated satellites but nothing threatening. Entering the asteroid belt now, Admiral. Vorn barely paid attention. The asteroid belt was just debris, leftover rock from the system's formation. The fleet could navigate through it easily. That's when every alarm on every ship started screaming at once. Energy signatures, the tactical officer shouted. Massive energy signatures. They're everywhere. The asteroid belt erupted. Hundreds of rocks that had looked inert suddenly blazed with power. Panels slid open on hollowed-out asteroids, revealing weapons platforms the size of city blocks. Targeting lasers painted every ship in the Vorkan fleet red. Evasive action. Vorn screamed. All ships evasive. The first volley hit before he could finish the order. Rail guns, hidden throughout the belt, fired in perfect synchronization. Tungsten rods accelerated to a fraction of light speed, moving so fast they were invisible until impact. The kinetic energy alone was devastating. Vorkan shields, designed to stop energy weapons and explosives, did absolutely nothing against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The lead destroyer simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of superheated debris. 3 more capital ships followed in the first 5 seconds. Their shields sparked uselessly as metal rods punched through armor like it was paper. Return fire. All batteries returned fire. The Vorkan fleet opened up with everything they had. Plasma cannons lit up space. Missile salvos launched by the thousands. Energy beams capable of melting mountains lashed out at the hidden platforms. Some of the human installations took damage. A few exploded. But there were so many of them scattered throughout millions of cubic kilometers of space. And they kept firing. Relentlessly. Methodically. Like machines that felt no fear. Damage report. Vorn demanded, gripping his command chair as the ship shuddered under impact. 43 ships destroyed. Over 100 more damaged. Admiral, their accuracy is impossible. They're hitting weak points, engine clusters, weapon batteries. It's like they know exactly where to aim. Of course they did, Vorn realized with growing horror. The old human had told them. 200 years of preparation. They'd studied Vorkan ships, learned every specification, identified every vulnerability. This wasn't a battle. This was a slaughter plan down to the smallest detail. Push through. We outnumber them 10 to 1. Maintain formation and push through. The fleet surged forward, taking horrific casualties but advancing through sheer numbers. They were almost clear of the asteroid belt when the second wave hit. Human warships appeared out of nowhere. They'd been hiding behind the moon of the fourth planet, their stealth systems so advanced that Vorkan sensors had mistaken them for background radiation. Sleek, angular vessels, smaller than Vorkan capital ships but moving with incredible speed and precision. Commander Rachel Hayes sat in the command chair of the Earth Defense Fleet carrier Defiance. Around her, displays showed the Vorkan fleet in chaos, exactly as planned. She allowed herself a tight smile. Her father had bought them the time they needed. Now it was humanity's turn. All wings launch. Show them what we've built. Fighter craft poured from the human carriers. Not piloted by humans, but by artificial intelligence with reaction times measured in microseconds. They moved in patterns no organic pilot could execute, flowing through space like schools of predatory fish. The fighters carried weapons the Vorkan had never seen. Nuclear pulse missiles, each one a miniature star that detonated with precise timing to maximize electromagnetic disruption. The Vorkan fleet's communications systems went haywire. Ships lost contact with each other, with command, with their own fighter wings. Laser arrays on the human capital ships carved through Vorkan armor with surgical precision. They targeted engines first, leaving ships dead in space. Then weapons systems. Then life support. Methodical, efficient, merciless. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered. Vorn's tactical officer shouted over the alarms. No formations. No honor guard protocols. They're attacking from every angle at once. A human destroyer rolled completely inverted and fired upward, hitting a Vorkan cruiser from below where its shields were weakest. Another human ship used a destroyed Vorkan vessel as cover, hiding behind the wreckage before emerging to fire at point-blank range. They fought like humans had always fought. Dirty. Practical. Using every advantage, exploiting every weakness, caring nothing for military tradition or honorable combat. Vorn watched his beautiful armada torn apart. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight fair. 3,000 ships gone already. 4,000. The numbers climbed impossibly fast. Admiral, we need to retreat. We can't retreat. Vorn snarled. The Emperor ordered us to destroy Earth. Earth's main fleet hasn't even engaged yet, sir. These are just their outer defenses. That stopped Vorn cold. These were outer defenses? He looked at the tactical display with new horror. The human ships were barely scratched. They were using the Vorkan fleet for target practice, learning, adapting, improving their tactics with each passing minute. A massive human battleship, easily twice the size of anything else in their fleet, emerged from behind Earth's moon. Its weapon ports glowed with enough energy to crack a planet's crust. All remaining ships, emergency hyperspace jump. Retreat to Vorkan space immediately. Sir, we can't just. That's an order. Jump now or die here. The surviving Vorkan ships, less than 1,000 out of 10,000, desperately calculated jump coordinates. Human fighters harried them every second, making it nearly impossible to focus. Ships jumped in panic, some colliding with each other in their haste to escape. Vorn's flagship was one of the last to jump. As they prepared to enter hyperspace, he looked back at the human fleet. They weren't pursuing. They were just watching. Waiting. Like hunters who'd made their point and were content to let a few survivors escape to tell the tale. His last thought before the jump was of the old human's words in the throne room. You want war? We will give you war. They'd given war all right. And the Vorkan Empire had learned what humanity really was. Not prey. Not primitives. But predators who'd been waiting 200 years for someone to make the fatal mistake of threatening them. The flagship jumped, carrying news of the worst military defeat in Vorkan history back to an emperor who had no idea what he'd unleashed. Retry. Emperor Thexel stared at the holographic display, his four hands trembling. The numbers couldn't be real. They had to be wrong. Some kind of error in the transmission. 9,214 ships. Gone. Destroyed, disabled, or missing. Out of 10,000. The greatest armada ever assembled in Vorkan history, shattered in less than 6 hours. How? His voice came out as a whisper. How is this possible? Admiral Vorn's face appeared on the communication screen. His armor was scorched, his scales darkened with soot. Behind him, emergency crews worked frantically to keep his damaged flagship operational. My lord, we were wrong about everything. The humans weren't unprepared. They were waiting. They turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Weapons hidden everywhere. Ships we couldn't detect until they opened fire. And their tactics. Vorn's voice broke. They don't fight like any civilized species. They attack from every angle. They use debris as weapons. They target the wounded. There's no honor, no mercy, just pure efficiency. Lord Malrix pushed forward, his purple scales pale with shock. But they're primitives? One planet. How could they possibly? They've been preparing for 2 centuries. Vorn shouted. The old human told us. We just didn't listen. They knew we were coming. They knew how we fight. They studied us, learned our weaknesses, and built weapons specifically designed to kill us. The throne room had gone completely silent. Nobles who'd been laughing 3 days ago now looked terrified. The intelligence officer stood near the back, his face saying he'd warned them. He tried to tell them. Nobody had listened. Emperor Thexel sank into his throne. 600 years of unbroken conquest. 600 years of military dominance. Ended in a single afternoon by a species they dismissed as irrelevant. Recall all fleets, he said quietly. Every ship. Every patrol. Pull everything back to our core worlds. Immediately. My lord. Malrix questioned. Do it now. The Emperor's voice cracked like thunder. If the humans can do this to our main fleet, they can strike anywhere. We need to defend what we have. But reports were already flooding in. Human warships had appeared in 12 different Vorkan systems simultaneously. They weren't attacking. They were just there. Sitting in orbit around Vorkan colonies, their weapons powered but not firing. A demonstration. A message. We can reach you anywhere. Anytime. And you can't stop us. On Earth, Jack Sullivan stood on the bridge of the carrier Retribution, wearing a crisp new admiral's uniform that felt stiff and uncomfortable. He'd been a cargo hauler for 30 years. Now he was a fleet commander. The promotion had come through an hour after the battle ended. Commander Rachel Hayes walked onto the bridge, and Jack felt his heart swell with pride and fear. His daughter had led the carrier group that shattered the Vorkan Center formation. She'd performed flawlessly. She was also way too much like her old man for his comfort. Dad, she nodded professionally. They were on duty. Personal stuff could wait. Commander, he acknowledged. Status. All ships accounted for. Minimal casualties. 15 wounded, 3 critical but stable. No deaths. She paused. We lost more people in training exercises than we did in actual combat. Jack nodded. That was the advantage of fighting with AI-piloted fighters and weapon systems designed over 2 centuries. Humans directed the battle but didn't have to be in the line of fire. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. It's from the Vorkan homeworld. Emperor Thexel himself. Put him through. The Emperor's face appeared on the main screen. He looked like he'd aged a decade in 3 days. His glowing eyes were dim, his posture defeated. Behind him, Vorkan nobles stood silent and afraid. Admiral Sullivan. The Emperor's voice had lost all its arrogance. We miscalculated. You declared war on my species, Jack said flatly. You threatened to exterminate 8 billion people. You called us primitives, cowards, primitives not worth your notice. We were wrong. Yes, you were. Jack let the silence stretch. What do you want, Emperor? Thexel seemed to struggle with the words. Pride warred with survival on his face. Survival 1. Terms. What are your terms for peace? Jack had thought about this moment for 3 days. Ever since he'd delivered humanity's refusal to surrender. He'd known it would come to this. The Vorkan would attack, humanity would defend, and then everyone would have to live with the consequences. Here's what's going to happen, Jack said. First, the Vorkan Empire stops expanding. No more conquests. No more forcing species to submit. What you have now is what you keep. The Emperor's jaw tightened but he nodded. Second, we establish demilitarized zones between human space and Vorkan space. 1 light-year buffer on each side. No military vessels, no weapons platforms, no exceptions. Agreed. Third, mutual recognition of sovereignty. You don't mess with us, we don't mess with you. You leave our ships alone, we leave yours alone. Simple as that. Thexel glanced at his nobles. Several nodded reluctantly. Acceptable. And fourth, Jack leaned forward. If you break this agreement, if you attack any human ship or colony or even look at us wrong, we don't come back with diplomats. We come back with everything we've got. And we don't stop until your empire is ash. Understood. The Emperor's 4 hands clenched into fists. Jack could see the rage behind his eyes, the humiliation of being dictated to by a species he'd dismissed as primitive. But he could also see the fear. The knowledge that humanity had weapons the Vorkan couldn't counter and tactics they couldn't predict. Understood, Thexel said through gritted teeth. Good. Jack's expression softened slightly. Look, Emperor, humanity doesn't want to be your enemy. We don't want to conquer your worlds or rule your people. We just want to be left alone to build our civilization in peace. Give us that and you'll never see our warships again. And if we can offer that peace, the Emperor asked carefully. Then maybe someday we can be neighbors instead of enemies? Maybe even friends. But that's going to take time and trust. For now, let's just settle for not killing each other. Thexel studied Jack's face for a long moment. You really mean that? You don't want war? I'm a cargo hauler, Emperor. Or I was before all this. I've spent my whole life moving supplies between colonies, keeping people fed and healthy and safe. That's what I want to go back to. Be quiet. Boring cargo runs where the most exciting thing is a stuck valve in the recycling system. A ghost of understanding passed between them. Two old beings who'd been forced into a war neither of them wanted. Very well, Admiral Sullivan. I accept your terms. We will transmit formal documents within the day. The screen went dark. Jack let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Rachel stepped closer, dropping the professional tone. You okay, Dad? No, he admitted. But I will be. He looked around the bridge at the young officers manning stations, at the tactical displays showing human ships positioned throughout the sector. We built all this hoping we'd never have to use it. And then we did. And it worked. But now what? Now we make sure it never has to work again, Rachel said. We showed them we can fight. Now we show them we can build. Create. Live in peace if they let us. Jack nodded. She was right. Humanity had proven it could wage war with the best of them. Now came the harder part. Proving they could wage peace just as effectively. He looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that had just learned humanity existed. The Vorkan had wanted war. They'd gotten it. And they'd learned a lesson that would echo across every alien empire for generations. Don't threaten humanity. Don't underestimate them. And definitely don't laugh when an old cargo hauler says his people will fight back. Because humans had learned long ago that survival wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced. It was about being willing to do whatever it took to protect your own. The Morning Star's captain had delivered his message after all. Just not the one the Emperor expected. Humanity was here. Humanity was strong. And humanity was done being quiet. The galaxy would just have to get used to it. Retriclog can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.